man, who's that cat coming down the street?
I don't know, but it sounds to me like that wicked man with the bone.
Sure
Escape
has
from
yourself a
Tarkov
ball.
is a game about guns. From the most intricate and layered bullet ballistic system I've ever seen, to an extremely wide range of actual real-life guns and gun components fully realized in-game, Tarkov is designed for and by people who really like guns. In comparison, the melee mechanics in Tarkov leave something to be desired. In other first-person shooters, melee usually means more than it does in Tarkov. Let's take Team Fortress 2 as an example. In Team Fortress, the game from outset was designed with melee as a key component to your arsenal. As such, they opted to make swinging your sword feel as natural as they could. You don't actually have to hit the same hitbox on your enemy character as you would with a gun. The game's more forgiving than that. As long as your crosshair's in the same general area as the target, you hit. Tarkov, on the other hand, is a game about guns. It uses the exact same hitboxes for gunplay as melee, has no crosshair to speak of, and actually has your character swing their axe in a real arc, meaning that a lot of the time your attacks will be bouncing off the wall next to a player you wanted to hit. And then there's the matter of actual damage done. Tarkov generally has a very low time to kill than other games, meaning oftentimes in a player versus player situation, the fight will be over within instants of it beginning. This makes finding a window to position yourself on top of the enemy a pretty hard ask. So, for all that downside, surely in a game like Tarkov, melee is at least deadly, right? Well, if you're new to Tarkov and want to find that exact thing out, you might load up into a raid going in with nothing but an axe, colloquially known as a hatchling run. What you'll usually find is if you manage to get to an AI at all before they blow your head off, your melee attacks probably just won't kill the enemy. And this will usually turn people off from the melee mechanics in Tarkov, encouraging them to ensure they really never run out of ammo, which is a good thing. It'll also convince them that anyone who would go into Tarkov without a gun is usually harmless and useless and just waiting for someone to put a bullet through their chest. Well, what if I told you that in terms of armor-penetrating damage to other players, melee can be one of the most single damaging things you can do to a person? It's pretty common knowledge that right-clicking a player's head with one of the viable melee weapons will one-tap them. What might be less well known is how you can one-tap any player through their helmet, no matter how strong it is. What's certainly even less well known is that once you hit a high enough strength level, you will one-tap any player to the chest through any armor 50% of the time. How much strength do you need to gain access to all this one-tapping potential? Max. You need max strength in order to gain access to melee crit chance. That's right, despite Tarkov being a game heavily focused on gunplay, it is an RPG, and there's a goddamn melee critical hit mechanic that almost no one is aware of. Well, alright, you might say. Then melee is only relevant for people with really high strength levels, who probably have access to really nice guns anyway, and would never really consider using their melee outside of as a joke. And if you don't have enough strength to support it, then surely it's correct to just buy a double-barrel shotgun or a PM pistol instead of going into raid with just your axe. Well, at the end of the day, Tarkov is just a video game. There's no correct way to play it. At the end of the day, you have to do what you think is fun. And to me, the challenge of being critically undersupplied and the desperate struggle for survival that every game becomes, it's pretty fun. Every run becomes a unique puzzle, where being able to think on your feet and adapt is absolutely paramount. And when I say every game, let me clarify what I mean. Unless I have a quest that specifically states that I need to use an actual specific firearm, I do not go in with a gun. I rely entirely on guns I find in raid, be that from a cache, a scav, or even a player. Call it the melee challenge or the wipe long 0 to hero, it's a unique and interesting way to play the game, and can lead to some of the most fun and intense runs I've ever experienced. The goal of playing this way is pretty much the same as any other challenge run. Achieve max traders, get your base upgraded, and try to make yourself the most powerful version of your PMC that you can. The main difference is that instead of worrying about gaining access to high-tier ammo and guns to increase your power, instead the main goal of these wipes becomes embracing Tarkov's RPG nature and getting to max strength and stamina, as well as earning yourself a legendary blade. You also don't have the luxury of being able to take it slow. Sure, leveling endurance as a hatchling is easy, but going into raid overweight to level strength without also bringing in guns is pretty difficult. Usually not worth the investment, not to mention how badly you need those strength levels in comparison to other players. Sure, max strength and endurance are amazing for anyone, but whereas the average Tarkov player loves being able to move faster and further, you as a melee man need to be able to move faster and further, just to have a chance of outpositioning people. You also rely on both the stats strength and endurance just to do damage. If you don't have enough strength, your base melee damage will be too low to ensure a quick kill. If you don't have enough endurance and run out while attacking, you will find your once intimidating melee attacks reduced to the levels of a wiffle ball bat. So the goal of the wipe isn't just to reach max stats eventually, the goal becomes hitting these thresholds as soon as you possibly can. Well, I hear you asking, how the hell does one reach max strength without bringing in guns? You were just talking about how reaching the weight limit for strength training is too expensive and inconvenient for the ungodly amount of runs you would have to do to achieve that goal. Well, there are ways to smooth out the process and make it much easier on oneself. In order to do this right, we're going to need 3 things. We need air filters, we need an epsilon container, and of course we're going to need a sword. Air filters is the easier one, requiring tier 3 mechanic among a couple other trader rep thresholds to achieve, and other than that, just a lot of money. The benefit of increasing experience gain on physical skills, strength and endurance, reduces our grind from something like 1,000 runs to something more like 600. The Epsilon container is an 8-slot container that you will need regardless of which version of the game you bought. True, the Gamma container you get from purchasing the more expensive Edge of Darkness edition of the game will give you 9 slots over the Epsilon's 8. However, the Epsilon is shaped as a 2x8 container, which happens to be the exact dimensions of our dumbbell, the tank battery. A tank battery weighs so much that even a max strength character will still be overweight with just that in his inventory. Naturally, at a lower strength, this means moving at all with the item in your inventory becomes a massive problem. Your chances of survival while bringing it in are damn slim. But hey, we won't need to survive any of these runs. All we need to do is use a stamina bar or 2 sprinting, and boom, we've hit the diminishing returns of the game, meaning we can't gain any significant amount more strength this run. This threshold is achieved quicker the more weight you have on your person, so by crippling yourself under the weight of this monster, you will hit your diminishing returns much quicker than using other methods. So how do you get the Epsilon container? Well, anyone who doesn't have an Edge of Darkness account can tell you that. It's the Punisher questline, a grueling series of tasks for most players, requiring you to kill 62 scabs and 35 players under a variety of different circumstances. Not to mention all the tasks needed to just unlock the Punisher line at all. This will be by far the biggest and most important challenge of the wipe. Luckily, 4 out of 6 of these tasks specifically require you to use guns, making them actually some of the easier tasks we're going to be doing in this challenge. The problem is that 2 of the tasks, 4 and 5, require you to kill players and don't require any specific guns. As such, you need to kill 20 players without bringing in a gun to do it, 10 of which will be on Shoreline, the sniper map. And finally, the Antique Axe. It's a good weapon, but the damage between it and the sword is too substantial to ignore. So in order to gain access to it, we will need to complete the skier task Chumming, as well as achieve rank 4 with Skier himself. Chumming adds another 5 players to the list of players we need to kill without bringing in a gun. Or I guess you could kill a cultist and take his taiga, but good luck with that. So we know what our goals are, and have our shopping list of workout essentials. The question becomes, how do we even get started? Well, when I'm doing the melee challenge, the first thing I do at the beginning of every wipe is sell off all the useless junk they start you with. Then it's time to head on over to Fence and start spamming the refresh button. Fence sells items that are sold to him, so some people will sell the merchant their melee weapons. And we really want to find the Antique Axe here. But if you get tired of refreshing, the Tomahawk kind of works. Technically, the Tomahawk, the Edge of Darkness starter axe, does have a longer range than the Antique Axe, and still does enough damage to one-tap someone to the unarmored head. In practice though, I personally find this thing to be beyond unusable. Just keep checking Fence and dead scabs you come across, you'll find an Antique Axe soon enough. So, you're now armed and ready to take on the world. Prepper's tasks are always going to be our default most important tasks, but having said that, we're still going to need the experience from other traders. And with that in mind, the most important thing we can do right now is unlock Jaeger. Jaeger is an odd trader in that you actually don't start the game off with him. You need to do the PMC level 2 mechanic task Introduction. Luckily, we have a way of reaching level 2 without ever entering the raid. By simply identifying all the basic items the traders sell you at level 1, you will naturally reach level 2. Trust me, it's a lot more convenient to identify the stuff out of raid anyway, rather than having to wait for a loading bar in-game every time you pick up a gun. Now, it's a simple matter of relogging your game, and boom, the first raid we do can be heading over to Jaeger's shack and unlocking him as a trader. Now comes the more fun tasks. Therapist is going to need 3 Salewas, Skier needs you to find him the literal worst armor and weapon in the game, and most importantly, our friend Praps is going to need you to kill 5 scabs. Now, I wish I could tell you that I got those first 5 scab kills easily in my first raid. However, at the start of this wipe, I was having a lot of trouble finding the antique axe. Not to mention, it had been quite a bit since I'd played, having mostly skipped last wipe. So my first few raids bringing in the useless frickin' tomahawk were not a huge success. In truth, this was a failing on my own part. Every melee weapon in this game has a different swing pattern and requires you to aim in different areas in different contexts, to ensure the arc of your axe actually connects with the opponent. Ideally, their face. Now, I have next to no experience with the tomahawk and didn't actually connect nearly as many shots as I probably should have my first few games. In my defense, however, the shots I did get were doing significantly less damage than the antique axe is capable of. So, for example, if you miss your first right click with the antique axe and burn a bunch of stamina, you can be confident it will still do enough to take down the enemy if you land the next hit. The tomahawk just barely does enough damage at full stamina. So if you missed your first attack, don't be surprised if you nail the second one right between their eyes and do 34 out of 35 damage. Luckily, I managed to procure a real antique axe from Fence pretty quickly after I realized how much trouble the tomahawk was giving me. From there, it's a pretty simple matter of hopping over to Factory and killing a few scabs. Plenty of terrible skier quest gear there as well. In fact, as an aside, let me talk to you about the bounty of Factory. Factory is one of the first maps ever put into Tarkov, and as such it is by far the smallest. Crowded corridors, dead corners, and an underground network of tunnels makes this map easier to make use of your short-range attacks. Not to mention that once you have access to the Factory key, you're never more than 20 seconds from extracting. And even without the key, going in on Factory with nothing, smacking down a scav, and leaving after doing literally nothing else usually nets you plenty of profit. Let alone if you can perhaps make use of that crappy scav kit you just earned and try to come up further. There's also something to be said for how much useful, applicable experience running a quick Factory run will give you, offering the opportunity to practice your axemanship on 3 scavs in the time it would have taken you to find 1 on other maps. You can have plenty of success bringing in melee on the rest of the areas in Tarkov, but Factory is always my default when I'm doing this challenge. It's a place, if you're crazy enough to try this challenge as well, you're probably going to need to get used to. However, we can't stay in the warm embrace of Mama Factory forever, and before long it's time to head to other maps, notably customs. We all know these early game fetch quests. Go grab a pocket watch here, go grab some documents there. None of this stuff requires you to invest too much or fight anything you can't handle. And hey, if you happen to find a useful reserve key, all the better. Yeah, I lucked out here and managed to find a key to one of the underground fenced-off supply sectors under reserve. Inside was 2 food crates and 2 technical crates. A damn useful source of early game supplies for quests and base upgrades. So after a few loot runs there, a generous helping of Factory just to make a profit, and I was ready to start marking things. Now would also be an excellent time to pick up the Jaeger task, the Tarkov Shooter. The Tarkov Shooter is a multi-part quest that insists you bring in a bolt-action rifle for each individual part. We can use this quest as a bit of a crutch, and anytime we're having too much trouble just bringing in melee, we can try to get a Tarkov Shooter task done while we do a different task as well. BP Depot is an even easier task than the last few, necessitating you go to 4 spots on the map and place markers at them. You don't need to survive after placing them, and it can take you 4 separate runs to do the quest, and it won't matter at all. With a little patience, this quest will be behind us. Next comes Deliveries from the Past. This quest can be pretty annoying if you aren't lucky, requiring a not terribly common key and the survival of 1.5 raids in a row. Heading up to Big Red and grabbing the cargo might take you a few tries if you run into the wrong people, and then taking the cargo to Factory to place it can be a whole ordeal on its own. often requiring you to go back and grab the package once more after dying to some shotgunning crazy person who refuses to let you plant. Always try to save a decent set of armor to use specifically for the factory portion of this quest. You only need to survive long enough to plant the marker. Just take a pain pill and leg it up there, or sneak up there while the rest of the lobby kills each other. Don't stress too much on getting this one done ASAP, as the next quest, ice cream cones, might stop you in your tracks anyway. I was prepared this wipe and managed to get my Lavatory 2 set up before I even unlocked the quest, allowing me to make 3 ice cream cones all by myself. Though in the past, this one has been a huge problem. So try to focus on finding the materials you need to set up a water filter 1 and lavatory 2. Notably hoses. Hoses are like gold to you right now. Hopefully ice cream cones doesn't slow you down too much, as it's pretty smooth sailing to Punisher from here. Postman Pat is a simple run through factory, shouldn't take you too many tries, whereas shaking up Teller is a bit of a strange one. The key it asks for is very common, and even at the midpoint of the wipe will be considered barely worth picking up. But if you're doing this quest early, you may find the key practically unobtainable. However, there is a simple trick to make this whole process easier. I picked up this wipe. Yeah, just keep checking jackets for any quest keys you find, and they don't have to be the most valuable or important keys, but if someone might need them, hold on to them. I managed to trade a spare 206 key I had from Operation Aquarius Part 1 for the 203 key needed for shaking up Teller, using the player barter feature on the market. But 114 machinery key, 303 cabin key, and many more could work if you posted them. Otherwise, if it's mid-wipe, this key is common as all get up, and as such, this quest shouldn't be an issue at all. Just like that, we're already on to Punisher. Granted, it's possible to rush this one too fast. You may find yourself level locked, at which point focusing on Jaeger, Therapist, and Mechanic tasks will pay dividends. Skier is extremely important as well, but do yourself a favor and do not do the quest Stirrup. Stirrup is a simple enough task, requiring you to kill 3 PMCs with any type of pistol. However, we're going to be really glad we have this quest later, and as such I highly recommend you don't pick it up until the time comes. For now though, it's time for our most important challenge, the Punisher quest. Now at first this is going to be one of the easiest quests in the run. After getting to this point with only axes, going into Shoreline and killing 10 scavs with an AKM, even a stock one, will seem pretty trivial in comparison. As for the next task, much as I wished it said silent weapon, the task is instead kill 12 scavs with a suppress weapon on Shoreline. Now instead of going on about how melee is the single quietest way to kill anything in the game, bar none, let's grab our PB pistol, the cheapest suppress weapon available, and clean up some scavs, before it's time to head back to the central quest hub of Tarkov, Customs. Now, if you thought killing scavs on shorelines with guns was easy, try doing it on Customs. I recommend a simple stock AK-74U with PS ammo, quantity being more important than quality for this run. Plan to stay in this raid for a really long time, as more scavs will spawn the later the map goes, and you aren't there to survive, and you just need to shoot stuff. And I think I'll leave off here for now. Expect the part 2 soon covering the truly difficult parts of this challenge, and really, thanks a bunch for watching.